Another harmonic device I want you to know about is, I just refer to it as the bass to chord tone relationship. You know, basically, when we hear the lowest note, which, you know, would typically be in the bass guitar or the left hand of the piano, everything above that relates to that note. And there are certain things you can do. Take the song Mighty to Save, for instance. You know, that starts off with this simple 3-note pattern. But the interesting thing is that what goes on below that changes, but that pattern never changes. But every time the bass note changes, it changes what these 3 notes mean. Make sense? So like right now, we just perceive that as being, you know, 1, 2, 3 in the key of A. So you pretty much know you're going to expect a song in that key, right? But here's what happens. The first chord that comes in is not an A. The first chord that comes in is a D. So all of a sudden, now those 3 notes, that's like, well, it's a D major 7th chord, isn't it? Because there's the major 7th. And then after that D chord, then you hear your A chord with an added 2nd in it. That's the B there. And then the next chord you hear is an F sharp minor chord. So now you've got an F sharp minor with, now that B is a 4th, an added 4th to the F sharp minor chord. Then you get an E chord next, and actually kind of a sus move, and you think, ooh, that's kind of a nasty clash against that. But that's that kind of angst, because you've heard this thing going, your brain just kind of accepts the fact that, okay, that's a constant. So even when you crash against it, so the point is, even though these 3 notes, now independently, these 3 notes, you know, I mean, it's do, re, mi, it's Charlie Brown. Those 3 notes could be anything, but the way you identify them is keyed to the bass note that's underneath. Here's another example, the song God of Wonders. Now, in God of Wonders, you have this, it's actually in B flat. Let me do it in B flat for you. So what the guitar is doing is just playing like a broken chord. It's playing a broken B flat chord. So you hear that by itself, you think, sure, it's a B flat chord. But then as soon as the band comes in, you hear something different. You hear an E flat chord. So now all of a sudden your ear interprets these 3 notes differently. This is the 9th, this is the major 7th of that E flat chord, you see? Now what that means is you could pretty much take any triad, let's take our C major triad for instance, and every bass note that you put underneath it, it's changing the function. So this chord actually turns into something different. Obviously with a C root, it's a C that you know. Let's just pick some bass notes to put underneath that. So you put a D underneath there, all of a sudden, that's like a D11 chord. That's pulling you really strongly down to G. Now if you put an E underneath it, well, that's just a first inversion C chord. If you put an F underneath it, think about this for a second. Put an F underneath that. Well, what you've got now is an F major 9 chord with the 3rd left out. So that's like an extended chord. Even with the 3rd left out, it's a richer structure than it would be with the F in, or a little bit starker structure. How about a G underneath it? Well, that's just a, you know, slash chord, C over G, second inversion G. Put an A underneath it. You tracking with me? Like every time you change that bass note, it's a different function. That's like an A minor 7. Now a B underneath it, you say, well, you can't really use that, can you? Well, the kind of place you hear that would be in a bass walk. In other words, if I'm, open the eyes of my heart, Lord, open the eyes of my heart, I want to see you. So you actually do hear that when it's part of a bass walk. Your brain kind of follows that walk and it accepts the fact that, well, that's a nasty crash there, but that's because it's walking down. So the melody in the bass kind of helps you by that. Now, just being completely crazy, taking it further, let's take that same C triad, If I put like an E flat underneath it, now you're saying, well, there's no way that's going to make any kind of a chord. Watch what happens if you, now these are pretty richly extended chords, but let's look at a chord, an E flat 7 with a 9th and a 13th. Let's make that a flat 9. There's the 9, there's the flat 9, and there's the 13. Okay, that G there is a third. Well, look what you've got. You've got a C triad with E flat in the bass, which is like a cadence chord taking you to A flat. Now, a lot of times you'll see these, some people call them upper tonality chords or upper structure chords. You'll see them written that way, because if you focus on the C on the top part of that, you know, that's why a lot of those, when they're used in jazz, it kind of takes you into a whole other place, because, wait a minute, I'm hearing C, but I'm hearing it over E flat. You follow what I'm saying? Like another example, let's do the same thing. There's our C chord. Let's put an E7 in the bass. There's E7. Now let's put our C triad up here. So identify what you have here. You've got, there's the third. Wait a minute, you've got a major third and a minor third. You remember when we talked about sharp 9 chords? See what I'm saying? So what you've got there is sharp 9, flat 13. It's still the C triad, but again, it's one of those upper structure jazz chords. So all that to say, bear in mind that, and this is why the bass player is so important, because as he changes notes, as he improvises through a progression, he's going to have a dramatic change on the harmony based on the notes that he chooses. That's why sometimes, you know, when you talk to bass players and, you know, they might say, well, is it really important that I learn all about the harmony and learn what's going on when really all I'm playing with is the bass? Well, the answer is definitely yes, because the note that's played in the bass has a huge effect on the harmony.